Jay Croucher here with two of the heavy hitters, Grant Liffman and Kurt Heelan. Kurt and Grant are in Southern California. I am in Central Stanford. The viewer can judge who has played this better in terms of where they have chosen to reside. We're going to talk about the NBA draft today. We're going to tackle some of our favorite post-lottery picks, teams that had confusing drafts. So we're going to start off with who had the best draft. Start with you, Grant. Who had your favorite draft?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of teams that got better, and I think there's a lot of teams that we could definitely praise. But the one that I just go to immediately is the Memphis Grizzlies. This is a team that has been going through some serious turmoil for the last couple of years, and a lot of it has just been cultural and organizationally in terms of just what's been happening behind the scenes and what they've been having to deal with. And they've gotten rid of a lot of really good players, guys that really propelled them to what we thought was going to be the start of a very good series of years for them, in getting rid of Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. And listen, some of this is just luck. This guy kind of fell into their laps at number 3, but Cam Boozer is just the perfect person for this team. And we've talked about this endlessly. Jay, you and I have talked about this just as an analytical darling, as somebody who's just organizationally fits in terms of the culture, in terms of the creating winning habits, someone who could be the face of the franchise. It just fits perfectly. And let's also remember that he's replacing the exact position they sent out in Jaren Jackson Jr. So absolutely love this for them. And then if you're restarting your franchise, you get guys that play hard, play the right way. And I think Kareem Lopez is the exact type of player you want also on this team. A guy that you bring in that can also just do all the hustle, do all the hard work. I think he has some really good upside. Are there some faults right now? Yes, there's some things that they're going to have to work on with him, but that's why he went in the 20s. I think Kareem Lopez fits them very well. And also, I'd be remiss not to mention the trade backs that they got, these second round picks, that therefore they flipped to get Beef Stew, a guy who had a really nice season. Also will bring some toughness to this team again. I just really love what the Memphis Grizzlies did. I think they have a really nice head start on rebuilding this thing.
Yeah, when we put together this list, Grant stole my first pick because I would have probably gone with Memphis. What I like is they've got a plan for the rebuild, right? Look, their front line is now Cedric Coward, Cameron Boozer, Zach Edey with Kareem Lopez and Beef Stew off the bench. Your front court's, that's a really solid 5 front court to get going. And they're obviously going to trade Ja, and there'll be changes in the backcourt, but I like where they're headed. I like teams with plans going in, which is why my pick was San Antonio. It became pretty clear over the course of the impressive playoff run, though, that they need some size, some depth, something to help out Wembanyama. Jaden Quinn's, I believe I'm pronouncing that wrong, out of Kentucky, though. I mean, injured, but if healthy, if he can get right, that is a defensive force inside. They just went big across the board. Every chance they got, they're like, let's get another center. And I think, they got out of the guy out of UConn as well, and like they're just going to be able to now roll in a number of, like, they've got guys to try out in that role and figure out who fits and what they're going to do long term, because it was a clear need.
Yep, Taris Reid Jr. Out of UConn at pick number 26. I agree. I think that a lot of this offseason is going to be about the Spurs and the Thunder just continuing to feel like they are, the tier 1 in the league going into next season. They have by far the shortest championship odds, and then there's a huge gap to the rest of the field. Obviously, you have to respect the Knicks as the current title holders and as joint favorites in the East. But my favorite draft was, in staying with that theme, OKC, just because the fact that they were able to get a Daimara without having to trade up, which was mooted. I think that he is, if you're OKC, you're really planning your future around how do we stop Victor Wembanyama. And I think in terms of that mission, Daimara is about as good as it gets. Also think that he just creates more flexibility for them going forward. They're going to have to make some changes with their roster. They have 16 players on the roster right now. Something is going to give. They're going to have to move salaries. But I think getting a Daimara, getting Bennett Sturts as well, these guys could potentially contribute straight away. And so for a team that I think already had the most complete and loaded roster in the league, to add these guys at 12 and 17 trading up for Sturts in the end, I think that, they are just ludicrously well positioned. Moving out of the lottery, Grant, who is your favorite post-lottery pick?
Yeah, so there's a couple options to go with here, and the guy that I've been a big fan of this player, and I thought he was a lottery type player before, and that's LeBaron Philon, and I really liked his development over the last season. His shot got better. I just love the way he generates offense. Philon is a guy that if he wasn't a little thin in stature, I think he would have gone much higher. And at 22 for Philly to get him there, what they essentially did was traded away Jared McCain for a couple seconds or a few seconds in LeBaron Philon. And I think that's a great switch. I think McCain was great, and I think he's going to be a really good player, and we saw what he can do with the Thunder. But Philon is just resetting the clock with somebody like him, and I think he fits perfectly with Philly, and I think they should feel very good at 22 getting a guy like him, because again, I had him going potentially to even as high as the Golden State Warriors at 11, depending how things fell down. So at the end of the day, Philon is a guy that I think really you add to a backcourt that already has Maxey and VJ Edgecombe, and he's just another young piece that they can build around. And I think their backcourt is set for many, many years in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I was surprised he fell to 22 like you. I pictured him going in the mid to late teens at worst. So to get him at 22 and add to what's already an impressive backcourt is a big plus for them. I'm going to go to Charlotte, which I think sneakily has had a really nice couple of days. Christian Anderson just fits in with what they want to do. He's got to get better on defense, but that guy, you just don't go wrong taking the best shooter in the draft. And he'll be happy to tell you that he is the best shooter in the draft, but he can fire from range and fits in with the style that they want to play, even without LaMelo. Like, you put him and Concaduple out there with Kobe White back, and suddenly you've got something. You've got something that's going to be tough to deal with in the backcourt.
Yeah, no, they are absolutely loaded with shooting and loaded with assets now post LaMelo trade. I'll throw out Cameron Carr to the Lakers, who they moved up to pick 24, one spot to make this pick. He was the guy who was, consistently mocked, more like 5-6 picks earlier. I think they might have been surprised that he fell there. And I think that Carr is the type of swing that this team needs to take, particularly when you're building around Luka Doncic. We think of lob threats more as, your Derek Lively's, your center players, but lob threats can also come from the wing. And I thought that, one of the resounding memories to me about the 2024 Mavericks run is Derek Jones Jr. Cutting and catching lob dunks from Luka Doncic. And that is the prototype for Carr, who is, an absolutely explosive athlete. He's 6'5", but with a 7-foot wingspan, jumps out of the gym. He is a much more polished player on offense than, a Derek Jones type, where he absolutely bombs threes, and he's going to be able to do that to help space the floor for the Lakers. He just injects athleticism and shooting onto the roster. Now, the reason why he was taken in the 20s, not in the lottery, is that there are some concerns about, his frame, how he's going to fill out and his strength defensively. And also, unlike Derek Jones Jr., who plays with, an insane motor and toughness, Carr is going to have to develop that at the NBA level. But I just like the real upside swing and just betting on athleticism around Luka Doncic, which has proven the blueprint for him to succeed in the past. All right, let's pivot off of optimism and into confusion. Grant, who was a team that you felt had a confusing draft?
I actually think there wasn't anyone that really did anything egregious in this draft. It wasn't anyone where I was just like, what are they doing? And so in that case, when I was looking confusing, it was more just trying to figure out what the plan is more than anything. What was the thought process behind this? And to me, Phoenix taking Koa Pete 30 was just more confusing than anything. And it was not a bad pick per se. Taking anyone at 30, you don't know what you're going to get. Let's not pretend that they're picking the lottery. That's just a big difference, right? And Koa Pete through the years kind of, he started out pretty high in this draft, the way people mocked it up, and he's fallen. And there's a reason he's fallen. And that is because his shot has just fallen off a cliff. He tried to redo it through the season and then into the draft process, and it is broken right now. He cannot shoot the ball right now. I think there's just certain parts of his game that have really fallen off. And I think maybe he could have used more time, some more seasoning before coming out. And I think at the end of the day, Phoenix for me only has limited assets. They've given away so many through the years. So what you do has to be so particular and so specific when you're trying to build this roster out. And I just don't know if Koa Pete fits that right now. I think at 30, sometimes you do take the higher risk players, and maybe Koa's potential is worth it. But for a team like Phoenix right now, I think they could have used people that are more ready right now because they need to fill out that roster with the limited assets they have. And I just don't know if Koa does that right now. Again, I'm not saying it's a bad pick, but obviously there's just more into this than I understand.
Yeah, to me, Koa's kind of a project, and that's why it's a little odd in Phoenix. But this is where he probably should have gone in the draft, to a team that was willing to play out the long game with him. It's just, it was Phoenix, that team. But I agree with you, Grant. I don't know if it was the wake of the Giannis trade or something, but a lot of stuff just went to chalk on this draft. There wasn't any like crazy moves, crazy trades. If I'm going to go with a confusing pick, I'm going to go with a team that has confused me for a few years, the Toronto Raptors. And they're like Project 6'9", where they just want a ton of 6'9" guys out there at the same time. And Adam Graves falls into that. Like, he's 6'8" and has some potential, has another analytics darling, but questions about how his games, can he level up from the Santa Clara to an NBA game? Certainly there's others out of there, Jalen Williams and others, who have done that, but he's going to have to show he can do it. He's got a little work to do. But I still just, I don't really grasp the entire concept going on in Toronto.
Yeah, they're a strange team at the moment, where I think that their offseason is colored by how kind of high vibes that playoff series was, where even though they lost in 7 to Cleveland and took them, down to the wire, and Scotty Barnes looked fantastic, and Colin Murray-Boyles looks like, the second coming of Draymond as a small ball center. But still, that is a strange roster that is still, like, Brandon Ingram is on this team, and RJ Barrett might get moved, and what is Emmanuel Quickley? So they have lots to unpack. I think Grant made the key point where I don't think that anyone had a really egregious draft. I don't think anyone is really piling onto anyone. It's not like a Pelicans situation last year with the trade to Atlanta up for Derek Queen, which in the end they kind of got out of jail with. Because if you look at the return, it ended up being an okay outcome for New Orleans, but I don't think it was a particularly good process to get to that outcome. But to me, the most confusing draft was Dallas, where, again, I don't think it's particularly offensive, but I just think that taking Morez Johnson Jr. at 9 might have been a little bit of a reach. Obviously, he has the connection to Dusty May. I would prefer that the Mavs be just building more shooting around Cooper Flagg. And Flagg he's obviously a very fascinating piece because he can play really anywhere 1 through 4. But I think that to unlock Flagg, ultimately you're going to want to have shooting around him. And that is an area that Morez Johnson Jr. doesn't really address, while, probably not playing center either. So just a strange fit there. But ultimately, I think that it was a draft that, was defined by a lack of offensive outcomes. So we will leave it there. Myself, Jay Croucher, Kurt Heel, and Grant Liffman, breaking down a draft that really, went to chalk, went to consensus, but still plenty to dissect over the summer.
Hit subscribe for more news, highlights, and analysis from the NBA on NBC.